Hi friend, JP from Tufftones.com. So, the big picture of mixing. You have to understand the whole picture before diving into details. This way, you have a game plan to mix with and have better idea why things are done the way they are. So nowadays, everyone can mix with a computer. All you need is a program called DAW, Digital Audio Workstation. In mixing, the point is to take those individual tracks, combine them together, and make them sound like a whole song instead of just many different tracks. Everything that has been done before mixing, songwriting, arranging, recording and editing, you want to present all these things in the best possible way for the listener. So you want to make the best possible balance between all the individual tracks. However, this is where things get tricky because there are many different options for a good balance. It's all about the mixer's preference. For example, some mixers want the drums to be loud and huge, others want to create a wall of sound with the guitars. It's all about artistic choices because mixing is mostly art. So in optimal situation, as a mixer, you can concentrate on fulfilling the artistic vision that you have, instead of just fixing the tracks or repairing mistakes. So in order to get in a good workflow, to, carry out your artistic vision, you want to handle all the technical and mechanical stuff beforehand, before you start actually mixing. So at first we prepare the project for mixing. This involves organizing the tracks, color coding them and routing them. You want to use the same colors and same kind of routing every time to make your navigation faster mix by mix. Alright? After this, you want to create a raw balance between the tracks. This means using only volume faders and panning. First of all, you get to know the song if you haven't heard it before, and second of all, you want to create the best possible balance with only faders and panning because then you make better mixing choices afterwards. And of course, you want to make sure your master output isn't clipping, so you want to leave some headroom. This way you're not introducing digital clipping, which isn't musical at all and will only ruin your mix. The raw balance also points out the problems of your mix. If you can't get something balanced, that's a hint for you that you need to use EQ, compression or something else. And if you rush through the raw balance, there's a chance that you're going to make the wrong kind of EQ or compression decisions later on. For example, when your track is in lower volume, it also sounds smaller and thinner, and then you make your EQing decisions accordingly, which might be totally wrong. Right, so when the raw balance has been done, we can move on to do mixing processing. What is that? It's basically the use of mixing tools like EQ and compression. Inside the DAW, you have these little pieces of software called plugins. Plugins can be EQs, compressors or something else, and you can put them on individual tracks or instrument groups or to your mix bus. This is basically a bus where you route all your tracks to, so this way you can for example use just one EQ to EQ your entire mix. Alright, EQ and compression make about 80% of your mix, so they are the most important mixing processing tools. The point of EQ is to give each track its own place in the mix. You see, there's only so much space in the stereo spectrum, so you have to carve some of the tracks with EQ to fit them in, because some tracks are fighting partly for the same frequencies. For example, in a guitar track, you might have some low frequencies that overlap with the bass. So you can use EQ to cut some of these low frequencies out to make more space for the bass. So EQ is basically just a volume knob for different frequencies. For example, if a track sounds dark and muddy, you can cut out some muddiness or boost some higher frequencies. Boosting eats up headroom and it makes the track louder, while cutting frees up headroom and makes the track quieter. So you might want to even up that volume difference with the output knob of your EQ, because after all the point of EQ is to shape the tone and not the volume. This way you also hear better what the EQ is actually doing. Right, so with EQ you can fit all the tracks together for better balance, but also shape the sound of individual instruments to improve their tone. With compression you can limit the dynamic range of instruments. This means reducing louder sounds and lifting up quieter ones. This way the track is easier to get in balance. Remember the raw balance and how it points out the problems of your mix? When you struggle to find a good place of volume for a track, that means it probably needs some compression. Okay, on top of that, compression can also shape the tone of transients. For example, impact for drums or sustain for bass. So together EQ and compression handles about 80% of your mix. All that's left is some spicing up and automation. What I mean by spicing up is delays, reverbs, and saturation, and all the special effects. So usually when you're recording, you're using close miking techniques, which means your tracks will sound dry, there's no room sound or ambience. This is where reverbs and delays come in. With them, you can create a sense of space. At the same time, you can create some cool effects with them. Saturation, however, is mild musical distortion that gives tracks that extra warmth, glue, and character. When you're using analog gear, such as tape recorders and tube preamps, you get this kind of saturation as a side product. We don't get this with digital gear. You know, when you're using an audio interface and a computer. Luckily, we can add saturation plugins to emulate the same effect. Right, the final phase of mixing is automation. This is probably the last 10%. So this crowns a good mix. With automation, we can manually fine-tune balance and everything that EQ, compression, and spicing up aren't capable of. This usually means a lot of volume automation. For example, if you can't hear something as well as you want it to, you can lift its volume up momentarily with volume automation. With automation, you can also introduce new elements and guide the focus of the listener. You can also automate every single setting of each plugin, for example, frequency of an EQ or feedback of a delay. Okay, so mixing consists of preparing the project, raw balance, EQ, compression, spicing up, and automation. After automation, it's just finishing touches and you're done. Of course, you don't have to do everything in this order. For example, I usually use EQ, compression, and saturation all together at the same time basically, so I'm not EQing every track before moving on to compression and so on. The spicing up and automation I usually do when the mix is about 80% done. After this, it's just fine-tuning. At this point, I usually reference my mix to a commercial professional mix that I know that sounds good, just to know that I'm in the ballpark. For example, if I have too much bass or treble or something. Then I listen to the whole mix from start to finish, writing down everything that bothers me. When I listen through the whole song, then I go and fix them and repeat the process. I also do the same with headphones and in the car. Usually in different environments, different things tend to pop up. When there's nothing bugging me anymore, the mix is done. Alright, hopefully this video helped you to understand the whole picture of mixing process. Mixing is only one of many things that you need to do in order to make professional quality music. If you want to know more, download this free guide that I've made just for you. It's about turning your homemade demos into pro-sounding full songs. You can get it from toughtones.com, doesn't obligate to anything, and you get the free guide. Thank you so much for watching this video. In case you like this, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe. Until next time, bye bye.